Next week is going to be a huge game for the Bears as they try to make a real big statement, I think, on what kind of season they can have this year in the Southern Conference, their third season in the Southern Conference. And as their fourth season overall, I think it's going to be a really big year for Mercer to kind of take the next step in the Southern Conference and become a contender in the Southern Conference. I really think they can do that this year. They've got everybody back again, all their starters, 20 starters back, 10 on each side of the ball. And they've also got 30 seniors this year, which they've never really had, including guys who have made large contributions to the program. And last year they had a lot of starters back as well, but so did the other teams in the Southern Conference. And I think that kind of caught up with them in close games. You saw them in close games. Their depth really kind of hurt them, or their lack of depth really kind of hurt them in the fourth quarter of those games, and that was big. It really was. They've lost 8 games by single digits the last 2 years, and those are things when you have the depth, especially on defense, you'll see those things play out in the fourth quarter. I've talked to a lot of the players. Tosin Aguibar is one of the guys I talked to this preseason, and he said, "Look, in the fourth quarter, we were really tired. We needed more depth, and now they've got that." And I think you're going to see that from them this year. You've got all those seniors back. Those guys have been with the program for 5 years, who were with the program before they even had a stadium. And I think people forget about that. So I think it's going to be a big year for Mercer. Looking forward to covering that team. I think we've got coming up next week, we're going to have a really nice feature on John Russ and Kirby Southard, who are the quarterback and the center. And interestingly enough, they're the only 2 players who have started all 35 games for the Bears. So we're going to have a real nice feature on them, video package, and a story coming up, and that'll be in the Telegraph next Thursday. So looking forward to talking to those guys for that, and looking forward to their season. I've really enjoyed covering Mercer, and I think they're going to have a big year. We had a big week of high school games last week. We really kind of jumped into the season with a bang. We saw the Mary Persons Houston County game over at Mercer was part of the Corky Kell Classic. I think it kind of lived up to the hype. You saw Houston County really kind of control things in the first half. Their offense was great. Excuse my throat here. And then in the second half, you saw Mary Persons really kind of take control of the game and keep them under control. So I thought that game really kind of lived up to everything that we thought it was going to be. It was 2 good teams going at it, and even though Mary Persons lost the game, I think they feel like they gained some things out of that game. And then if you're Houston County, you played a really good team and you won the game, and I think they got plenty out of it as well. They both played a lot of players. They both got to see some new guys. So I think that was a big game. And then you saw Jones County hang with Lee County in a really, really interesting game. Lee County's really, really talented. Multiple Division I players on that team, and Lee County and Jones County was right there with them. Unfortunately, Bradley Honeycutt, their quarterback, got hurt, and he's going to miss this week's game with a high ankle sprain. So that kind of slowed them down a little bit. So 2 great games, and then you had the Northside game against Warner Robins, the big rivalry game, and Northside was able to dominate that game. I don't think anybody expected that. So. That was kind of a surprise, and then I got to see Mountain Sales play really, really well against Pachili. We've got a couple of questions here. Southwest is playing Westside this week. This is one of the big games of the week, really, and I picked Howard to beat Westside last week. I was wrong. Westside still has not lost to another Bibb County program. If you think about that, since that program kicked off, they have not lost to another Bibb County program. So now they've got Southwest. Can Southwest be that team to finally beat Westside? The thing about Southwest is I've heard very good things about Southwest in the preseason. Roger Holmes from Dublin told me that Southwest hung with Mary Persons in a scrimmage, and that was a red flag for everybody else in their region of Waco and Northeast and Dodge County and Dublin, Bleckley County, those teams. And then if you throw Southwest in that mix too, that could be a really, really good region. So, we'll see what Southwest can do. I think Southwest can hang with Westside. I think they've got some very talented players. Slocum kid at quarterback is really, really talented young man. I really like what Joseph Dupree has done at Southwest as far as building that program and getting them going. and I think they can have a chance to beat Westside. I just think, and me, I'm going to have to stop picking the other teams to do it until somebody does it. I've been picking teams to beat Westside from Bibb County to beat them, and it just hasn't happened. And I'm just going to stop doing it until somebody finally kind of breaks that stranglehold that Westside has and beats them. So we'll see. I don't know that Southwest will beat Westside, but I think it's going to be a really close game Friday night, and one that I'm looking forward to seeing how that one turns out, because I think Southwest is kind of a team that can surprise some people. Another question: how well do you think Fort Valley State will do this year? It's going to be tough for Fort Valley State. I really do. Thanks, Eddie, for the question. They've got a new coach in Kevin Porter, just started in June. He doesn't have a real full staff of coaches, only a couple of full-time coaches, and they only have 9 scholarships. And you think about 9 scholarships spread among that team, while the other Division II teams, the full allotment is 36, and most of those teams use their full allotment. So it's going to be difficult. I think Kevin was a really good hire. I was a big fan of Coach Pittman. I've known Coach Pittman for a while. I covered him in Albany when he was the offensive coordinator at Albany State. So I was hated to see him go, but I think Kevin Porter is going to do a really good job with Fort Valley. It's just going to take him some time to kind of overcome some of the issues they have with resources, and he's going to have to get his kind of players in and his kind of coaching staff in. But I think he's got a chance to kind of build something there if he can get the fans behind the program and get the resources they need to compete. Mount DeSales, question here from John: how did Mount DeSales look last week? Have they improved enough to beat Central? I was really impressed with Mount DeSales. I thought they would win that game. I picked them to win the game over Pacelli, but they dominated Pacelli from start to finish. And I was really surprised by that, because Pacelli had beaten them pretty handily the last 2 years. So they really came out, and from 5 minutes into the game, it was pretty clear who the better team was. So Central, I think, is a little different animal. Mount DeSales played really clean football last week. They had a couple of turnovers and a few penalties, but they were really in control of that game from the start. They're going to have to play the same way to beat Central. I mean, it's a different kind of a task coming up to beat Central. Central's athletic. They're well coached. And I think that they're going to be a tough task for Mount DeSales. And so that's going to be a really fun game Saturday night over at Mercer. It's part of the doubleheader, the Macon Touchdown Club doubleheader. So I really look forward to that game, and I think that one's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see that. The FPD Howard is the other game that's part of that doubleheader. So we'll see what they're able to do. Those 4 teams, I think it's going to be a great night of football. And to showcase, our town, those teams playing together, I think it's going to be a really fun night. It's just going to be a tough task, I think, for Mount DeSales. But if they play like they did this past week, I think they've got a chance. Great. Next question from Zachary. Gun to your head, does Eason take the first snap for UGA next Saturday? Caitlin, what do you think? Caitlin shakes her head no. I think no. I thought all along in the preseason that he was going to be the starter. And I've said really that if he can't beat out Grayson Lambert, it's going to be hard for him to beat out Jake Fromm next year. I really believe that. Houston County quarterback, who I think is going to end up being Georgia's starting quarterback probably sooner rather than later, especially if Jacob is not able to beat out Grayson. I think he'll eventually be the starter this season. But I just more and more I'm hearing is that he's just not going to start that game for Georgia next week against North Carolina. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Jason Butt wrote a really good column in our paper today. You can check it out on Macon.com about the quarterback situation. And he's around it every day. So check that out, Zachary. There'll be a good way for you to kind of find out what's next for UGA and their quarterback situation. But I really do think that somewhere through this season that Jacob will be the starting quarterback. If he's not, I think that's bad news for Georgia fans. I think they can still have a really good season. I predicted them to win 10 games. I predicted them to win the division. But I think that's more about the division and the other teams that they're playing more than what they've got going on at quarterback. It sounds like that they're going to need some time to work things out at quarterback, and that's probably not going to happen before next week. It just sounds like Lambert's going to be the starter next week, or maybe even Bryce Ramsey, but I don't know they're going to throw Jacob Eason to the Wolves next week against North Carolina. Got a question here from Justin, the Mercer football prediction. I picked them to finish third in the Southern Conference. I vote on the preseason poll for the Southern Conference, and I picked them third. I look at their schedule. They're not going to beat Georgia Tech, but then they should beat Tennessee Tech. They've got some games in the conference that they should win, and I just think that this is a team that can really have a strong season. I really do believe that. And I wrote a column for, spoiler, for tomorrow's paper in the Telegraph about their season and what kind of season they can have. But you look at their schedule, so they play the Citadel starting off. I think they're going to win that game. Georgia Tech, they're probably going to lose. Tennessee Tech, they'll probably win. And then, Austin Peay is another non-conference game. They'll win that one. So there's three wins right there. And then the rest of their schedule, VMI should be a win. Furman at home should be a win. I mean, they've had two really close games with Furman. Wofford on the road is probably a toss-up. East Tennessee State should be a win. So there's three more wins right there. That's 6. And then you look at Western Carolina at home, probably a toss-up. Samford on the road, that's a tough one. So I think 6 or 7 wins, 7 or 8 wins, and probably getting up to about the 500 level in the conference is a really good year for Mercer. I think that's the kind of year that they should probably expect, and I think it's going to be a fun year. I think they're going to be right in the mix, and Chattanooga Citadel are probably at the top, but I think Samford, Mercer, Western Carolina, Furman, Wofford, maybe even, are probably all right there in the mix to be third, and I picked them third in the conference, so I think they're going to have a good year. Question from Ryan, how do you think Peach County will respond against Houston against last weekend's tragedy, chances for a shootout upset? The thing about Peach County is they went through something, and their team and their families and the students and the teachers and everybody within that school, everybody involved with Peach County football and Raekwon Smith's family went through something that those people shouldn't have to go through. High school football players should not have to go through this, but this was just a kind of an accident that happens, and you just feel for those kids. You feel for the coaches. Chad Campbell's one of my favorites, and I know he'll be able to get the kids refocused as much as anybody would be able to. I think it's going to be hard for them to beat Houston County. I know they're going to play with a lot of emotion this week. I know the stadium is going to be packed. But I just think it's going to be really, really difficult for them to hang with Houston County. Not hang with Houston County, but to beat Houston County. I think they'll hang with Houston County. I think it'll be a close game because Chad is that good of a coach and he's got that good of a staff and he's got good players. I mean, let's be fair. Peach County has got a lot of talent on their roster this year coming up, for next year as well. But I think Houston County is that good. I really don't know that I see anybody challenging Houston County except for maybe Northside after what we saw from Northside last week in their game against Warner Robins. And that's one of the other big games we've got coming up this week as well. We mentioned Southwest, West Side, Houston County game with Peach County is a big one. Stratford is hosting Savannah Country Day. I'll be over there. If you're a Stratford fan, I'll be covering that game. Tattnall Square. Chance Jones has got his first game as their head coach playing Wilcox County. We'll have that game as covered as well. And we, trying to remember all the games. Mary Persons Jackson, don't forget about that one. That's a huge rivalry game, and we'll have that one covered as well. So tons of big games coming up. We got another question. Which of the 2 TD games stands to be the most competitive on Saturday? Kind of put me on the spot here. I think they're both going to be competitive. I really do. I don't know that Mount DeSales can beat Central, but I think they can hang with Central. And by competitive, I mean, maybe a 2-touchdown game. I think they can be right there. And I think FPD Howard is going to be really competitive. We haven't really seen FPD since they haven't started their season. We saw Howard last week. They really struggled offensively against Westside. To be expected a little bit. I mean, they're going into a new system. They're going kind of back to what they have been throughout, or what Barney's teams have been throughout his tenure at Tattnall Square and now at Howard, instead of throwing the ball like they did last year. So I think both of those games are going to be competitive. I think they're both going to be fun to watch, and I think it's going to be a great night of football, to be honest. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. I'm glad that the coaches have decided to do this. I think it's bigger than high school football in this city. It's something that has needed to happen. Jesse Hicks has said that. He can't understand why people kind of live in their own little bubble. And it's great to see these private school teams and the public school teams playing each other. And I think it's a huge step forward for athletics in our town, high school athletics, and I hope everybody gets out to Five Star Stadium and goes to those games Saturday. I think it's a big deal for our city.